and they never explain what you got wrong. They don't call it wrong. They call it disinformation, which is could be right. That's usually tons. And speaking of, so I was out of the country yesterday and didn't have adequate internet access on the plane to really follow this. And I don't understand the context exactly, but the internet was dominated yesterday by video of Ben Shapiro, who you work with at the Daily Wire. I think started attacking you. Here's the video. I just want to get your reaction to it.
Yes, and then the question about Candace Owens. I think we're here to turn this into Israel. Yeah, he's been absolutely disgraceful. I think that her co-sophistication on these particular issues is ridiculous. It's not co-sophistication, it's ridiculous. Everybody can see what she's saying, the things that she's saying, and I'm distracted.
So maybe there's a point in the video where he explains what exactly you did wrong and how you were wrong. I haven't seen it. But to call somebody, quote, absolutely disgraceful, particularly a coworker, seems like a pretty big step. And I really don't know the background here. What is that about?
You know, there isn't much of a background. I saw the video when everybody else saw it when I woke up.
No one warned you about it.
No one warned me about it. It looks like maybe he didn't know he was being recorded. It looks like it was some sort of private event. I got no clarity on the issue that he was particularly speaking on. And in what was said, I can't respond to it beyond what he's saying because it's just ad hominem attacks.
Because it's not, we disagree, or I don't think she's correct, or maybe she doesn't know what she's talking about. It's absolutely disgraceful.
Yeah, exactly. And so I can't respond to it on a level of intellect because there's nothing that he has expressed in at least that short clip that he fundamentally disagrees with in terms of what I said. But I will say that I'm not going to respond with the same ad hominem attacks. I don't think it helps further discussion. If that was me that was caught on the video saying that about colleagues that I work with, I would be embarrassed. So I think that the video speaks more to Ben's character than it speaks to mine.
Has he texted you to apologize or explain or anything?
No, nothing. I haven't heard a single word. It just was sort of something that he said. And you know what? Ben and I made disagreements, so I don't think that that's particularly something that's interesting. We disagree on the COVID vaccine. We disagree on Ukraine and Russia. He has taken virtually every stance that's been the opposite of mine on every issue over the last 5 years. So I don't think that that's particularly remarkable.
No, I didn't remember that.
Yeah, he was pro the COVID vaccine. I was anti the vaccine. You know, we were all idiots for not getting the vaccine. So that's totally fine. I am totally open to people having a different opinion.
Right.
I would hope that amongst colleagues that it would always be a civil disagreement, and I would never in a private event stand on a table and talk badly about Ben.
It's a little weird. So he was on the left on those three biggest issues of our time. Is what you're saying?
He has converted his opinions. He's accepted responsibility. He said I was wrong about the vaccine.
Okay.
He is, obviously pro pharma. His mom's a doctor, and I say to people, I'm very aware of my perspectives on big pharma, and I talk about it on my show openly. And I think that that's a tremendous credit to the Daily Wire that they allow a difference of opinions. But I would, as I said, hope that it would remain respectful and that you wouldn't throw your colleagues under a bus, so to speak.
I think that's great. And just for clarity, because I really don't know, is he your boss?
I think there's a lot of misunderstanding about Ben's involvement. He's not the CEO of the Daily Wire. He is not making the decisions of the Daily Wire. And I want to make it very clear to people like, how could you possibly say Daily Wire after this? I have a very good relationship with the co-CEOs of the Daily Wire. Especially right now, the acting CEO is Caleb Robinson. He's a wonderful person. He's worked very hard to be where he's at. We have a lot in common that we connect on. And so people don't get to see that, which is unfortunate. Ben lives in Florida. He's not a part of the day-to-day movement of the Daily Wire. The rest of the hosts have their shows situated in Nashville. So we see each other every day. We talk. There's great camaraderie. And there's actually more agreement. There's actually a lot of people that are, as I describe myself, just pro-America first. And I think I've been that way consistently throughout my political career. Whether people agree with it or not in different moments is up for debate. But I don't want that video to become a reflection of how the Daily Wire works and the Daily Wire operates, because I've had a very good experience with the CEOs and, love Michael Knowles, love Matt Walsh, Andrew Clavin. We all get along really great. Well,
it certainly speaks well to the Daily Wire. So it's not, a clip like that on the internet, Candace Owens is out or something. That doesn't sound like that's what it means.
Yeah, no, it's a small group of people. We see each other every day. Brett Cooper is another one who just joined about 2 years ago. She's great. She's up and coming. And there's a lot of stuff that we're working on. And that's why I think this video is even more unfortunate, because people see him as a figurehead, rightfully so, of the Daily Wire, and it allows people to, speak energy into the Daily Wire that isn't necessarily there because he's not there on a day-to-day basis.
Okay, that's very interesting. So if we take 3 steps back and give us the context for this debate, how are you on different sides of it? I heard you endorsing Hamas. No.
Well, I have not endorsed Hamas in any way, and yet people have interpreted things that I say, or actually rather things that I don't say. It's becoming very much reminiscent to me, and why I have used my platform to say this of Black Lives Matter, where if you don't say anything, they say your silence is violence. If you say something and it's even-handed and it's nuanced, which is to say, during the times of Black Lives Matter, you might say, I don't support police brutality. Who does? I don't support racism. Who does? But also, I think that police are a crucial part of every city. We need to have policing in cities, so these calls to defund the police are immoral and wrong, are going to lead to more black deaths. People didn't want that nuance. When Black Lives following George Floyd, there was no nuance. You had to explicitly say defund the police. You had to post a black square. You didn't post a black square on Instagram, by the way, specifically on the platform Instagram, and you were racist. Maybe you were in another country. Maybe you just didn't log on to Instagram. You were accused of being a racist. I'm seeing a lot of that behavior right now when it comes to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. A conflict that I have seen every single person, including myself, condemn what happened on October 7th. Because who wouldn't condemn terrorism? It's probably who would not condemn innocent Israelis dying. But if you then say that it's also sad when an innocent Palestinian child dies, suddenly this is pro-Hamas, or you need to say, even when you're talking about how sad it is that a child dies, you need to button that statement by saying, put that child as a human shield. That's not going to be my response. First off, as a mother, that's not going to be my response as somebody who's about to give birth. When I see these images of children involved on both sides of the conflict, I pointed to the people that are mocking dead Israeli children and said that they are horrific. I'm even keel on this matter, and yet people think that you need to be extreme. So people that become more radical and extreme are perceiving a moderate stance as not enough. And
I was saying, people disagree with you or whatever, but you sort of seem radical and stuff.
I'm specifically not radical. My stance has not changed in terms of whether or not America should be involved in this conflict. Whether we were talking about Afghanistan, my comments have been clear. They've been documented for years. Whether we were talking about Ukraine and Russia, my comments have been clear and they have been documented. I mean, you can go back to me even talking about NATO expansion before things erupted between Russia and Ukraine, and having a meaningful discussion about how much expansion is too much expansion. How would we feel if we had troops in our border? These are things that should be allowed in academic discussion. You should be able to sit on stage. You should be able to debate these ideas without using ad hominem attacks to say that you're a pro-Putin puppet or you're pro-terrorism. Even the aftermath of 9/11 is something that we all remember as part of my childhood. I think I was in 7th grade at the time, and I'm born in the New York City area, so this was a very big deal. If a person the day after 9/11 wanted to debate the Patriot Act, it's not fair to call them terrorist sympathizers. No. Actually, they would have been proven right in the long run. That act would give a lot of our freedoms, and I think there was only one congressman Republican that was against the Patriot Act at that time. So it's important, actually, when you start making decisions in a highly emotional time, that people sit down and have these academic debates. And there are people that are saying, no, it doesn't matter because people are dead, that you need to just choose a side, and that needs to be it. It needs to become tribal.
There's also, I can't help but notice that your views reflect mine. I would say pretty much. I'm an American. I was horrified by what happened on October 7th. I think it's pretty strange. I don't understand how it happened, but innocents died, and that's awful. And I hated watching that. I feel so sorry for the Israelis who were killed. However, there's an emotional response that is disproportionate, I think, on the part of some commentators. I mean, our country's being invaded right now by millions of young men whose identities we don't know, probably don't even like America, and they're not living here. Over 100,000 Americans die every year of fentanyl. I've known a couple. Those are real tragedies. I've never seen anything like the emotion from any commentator around those tragedies as I'm watching about a foreign tragedy. I think that's odd.
I think what tends to happen is, of course, we all have elements of selfishness in us. And so when it particularly pertains to an issue that impacts you, I was strongly speaking out against Black Lives Matter as an organization very early on as a conservative because I understood what the implications were going to be of defunding the police.
Right.
This issue was important to me. I created an entire documentary to talk about this issue.
Yes.
And I held on for a long time. People began to see that actually I was telling the truth, and now we have more death in inner city communities than we had before.
Yes.
These riots and these George Floyd protests calling for defunding of the police. And I think in terms of this, that's what's also happened is that people that are pro-Israel, a lot of them because they have family members in Israel, they have homes in Israel, and so they feel very attached to this issue. And I was very happy to host somebody who was pro-Israel. He's a pro-Israel comedian on my show the other day, and I explained this to him. I said, you are demanding that we have this same response that you are having about what people are saying on college campuses. The rhetoric on college campuses hasn't changed. Did you not remember what they were saying? What professors were saying? The anti-white explicit racism that was happening, not even just allowed in terms of student protests, but was written into the curriculum at these universities for years. People were learning this actively in school, that whiteness was associated with wrongness. You had college professors that were writing about this need to there need to be less white people in America. You can find these articles. They exist online.
That seems genocidal. I mean, if you're saying, like by definition, if you're saying being a certain ethnicity or race is itself a sin, we need less of you. I mean, that is the definition, is it not?
Right. It was understanding of needing to breed out white people. It was unbelievable what I was seeing. I was impacted by it because I'm in a biracial relationship and I have biracial children. So you are telling me that my children are going to have to decide between whether or not they are white oppressors or they are black victims. It doesn't stand for me. So I was attached to this issue, and it's something that I fought for hard on college campuses. And there was no support. There was nobody talking about, well, this is what needs to go. These kids need to go on the blacklist. And by the way, if they did speak that way, I would disagree with it because I am pro 1A. I believe in the First Amendment. I believe that kids, by the way, are naturally stupid. In case people forget, I started on the left. Right? So if you found me in college, you would have found a pro-life person who believed, in some racist principles, fundamental racism in America, because that was what I was being taught systematically in the classroom. And then I got to grow up and change my mind. And I don't think people have thought past their immediate emotions to consider what's going to happen when you put these kids on blacklist. You think that's going to bring them over to the pro-Israel side when they get older. Most of these kids, especially when you're talking about the cream of the crop at these Ivy League universities, already have access to money and wealth and connections. And so maybe debating the issues and explaining to them why it was wrong to sign this specific letter, which didn't call for explicit violence against the Israelis, but it actually was very poorly timed. It blames them for what happened. So it would have been horrific. Imagine after 9/11, if somebody issues a letter on college campus and says, "Oh well, sorry about the fire."
I agree.
Yes.
I get why donors are mad.
Imagine. Yeah.
I support donors giving money to things they agree with.
Yes,
I strongly do.
Yep.
The part that, and so I have no problem with that at all. You don't like it, don't pay for it. Good for you. However, then I thought, well, wait a second. If the biggest donors at, say, Harvard have said, we're going to shut it down now, where were you the last 10 years in the white genocide? You were allowing this. And then I found myself really hating those people, actually. You're okay with that? On what grounds were you okay with that?
And this is why I've been trying to explain to the pro-Israel lobby that what you were seeing as lack of support is people are asking the question is, where were you? As we have endured all of this.
You were paying for it, actually.
Right.
You were paying for it.
You were paying for it.
You were calling my children immoral for their skin color. You paid for that.
Yeah,
so why shouldn't I be mad at you? I don't understand.
And so that is, obviously you have a ton of white people that are asking this question and they're now being called anti-Semitic. And I think that's wrong. I think these are meaningful questions that deserve to be answered. Why was this sort of verbiage allowed into the curriculum? I mean, could you imagine if in the curriculum it said that every Jewish person born is a terrorist? This is systematically what has been said.
I would be totally opposed to that.
You're learning this not even just by the way at the college campus level. In high schools, I covered this on my show. In high schools, that they are now allowing children to stay up in an auditorium during not Black Lives Matter week, during what is February? African whole month of February, African American month. I'm sorry, Black History Month. I was totally like, what is February? Black History Month. They were allowing at this very elite school $50,000 per month to attend the school, per year to attend the school, for these children to stand up on a stage and yell in an auditorium. Black kids were allowed to be on the stage. White kids were sitting down at this elite school, and they said, "You don't know what we lived through. You don't understand how your whiteness impacts me." This is going on in New York City right now. That is explicit anti-white racism that is happening, and I covered it on my show extensively. Nobody cared. There was no bus calling these things anything wrong, and so trying to explain that of why people maybe are not reacting with the amount of vigor that you would like to see is now being interpreted as anti-Semitism. So everyone's being called anti-Semitism.
I have a right to be mad. At least, and let me again speak for Americans, middle-aged Americans, which is what I am. I've got 4 draft-age children. So if you're playing recklessly fast and loose with their lives, then I have a right to despise you, and I do. So if you're Nikki Haley who's running for president, or Ben Shapiro, or half the people I see on television casually mentioning the possibility of nuclear war, or sending Americans to fight in the Middle East, or in any way involving us in a war that has nothing to do with prosperity and peace at home, nothing in other words to do with us Americans, then I have a right to call you out and be really offended because it's my family. They live here. It's not a joke to me. There's nothing abstract about it. And that is the difference between what's happening in the Middle East from what's happening in Ukraine, about which I had very strong feelings, but I didn't think there was a realistic possibility that my kids could be enmeshed in it. Now there is. So I think, get some self-respect. I would say to my fellow Americans, get a clearer picture of what's important. Your children are important. That's number one, your children. And if they're threatening your children, I don't care what their justification is, they're your enemy. And that's how I feel about it, okay? Number one. Number two, in the United States, the right defends free speech. For most of my life, the left defended free speech in the United States. Till about 2014-15, Donald Trump, a lot of things happened. The parties inverted, the wings inverted, the left became about enemies of free speech. And it was really up to the right to defend our First Amendment. The right to say what you think is true, not be a slave. Because, by the way, if you can't say what you think is true, you're not a citizen, you're not a human being, you're a slave. So the right has been the group defending that sacred, God-given right. With the rise of this war in the Middle East, you're watching people on the right say, well, actually, there's a difference between hate speech and free speech. Well, no, there's not, actually. You may hate certain sorts of speech. Certain kinds of speech may be immoral. According to me, I think certain kinds of speech are immoral. But if you're suggesting it should be illegal, you can use the power of the state to make me be quiet and enslave me, then you are again my enemy. And you're seeing a lot of people on the right say that in the United States. And I'm absolutely shocked by it. I can't even believe what I'm watching. And I can't overstate my rage or my contempt for them. Because these are the people, and by the way, if they're not defending free speech in my country, no one is. And we're done. And we're going to have hate speech laws, which again are just laws of criminalizing speech that the people in charge hate, that they're threatened by. That's it. That's all they are. They're not on behalf of some oppressed group. Many of those groups are not actually oppressed, but leave that aside. Maybe they are oppressed, but it's not on their behalf that these laws will be passed. It's on behalf of the people in charge. And that's completely wrong. And you don't live in a free society. You don't live in a society of citizens and human beings. You live in a slave state when you have that.
When it comes to Candace, again, I've not said word one about Candace since like last November. So that is what it is. I have not publicly.
So I mean, more clearly between, say, whatever the divide now is between you and Tucker. When Tucker
I offered Tucker multiple times to run the show and hash this out. It was Tucker who accused me of dual loyalty. It was Tucker who suggested I hate the country. Now, not me saying that about Tucker. I said precisely the reverse about Tucker, which is that I believe that Tucker loves the country. So it is not up to me to heal a breach that was created by Tucker there.
I've criticized Tucker's policy positions. I've never criticized his motives.
No.
I've never suggested that Russia was in the pay of the Russians, that Tucker was in the pay of the Russians. I've never suggested that Tucker is an America hater, that he despises the country in some sort of deep, dark, conspiratorial way or anything like that.
Just said the reverse.
I just said the reverse, and I said the reverse multiple times since he said the reverse about me, since he said that I hate the country back in December. Again, I've reached out to him. Our team has reached out. There must be some sort. And you're just asking questions. You don't know. Right? This is the game that is played by so many corrupt commentators. Just asking questions. I don't have to show you evidence that something terrible is happening. I don't have to actually demonstrate how the thing is happening. I don't have to tell you who the problem is. Wink, wink. But I can just tell you right now that there is but. Even and if I'm asked about it, hey, I'm just asking questions. Now, let me tell you something about just asking questions for a second. Just asking questions is a game for children. My son is 7. He can just ask questions. My daughter is 10. She can just ask questions. If you're 50 and you're just asking questions, I don't think you're just asking questions. I think that your level of curiosity is actually quite low. I think that you don't care enough to know or know enough to care. I think that the vast majority of people who are in the just asking questions business have an answer that they want to suggest.
To the elephant in the room for just a moment, because I saw you this week on Piers Morgan. He asked you repeatedly about Candace. You repeatedly basically said,
I won't talk about that. I'll say here too.
Yeah, and that's fine. And, you know, it's interesting because we all sort of came up together to different extents and we've all done a million things together, public events and networks and all those things. It seems to me that at this moment, she's now a free agent. She happened to end up on Locals, which I created, and we're a platform, not a publisher that you guys are. Can you at least talk to just sort of where it's at now? She's not with you. She's free.
She's free to do whatever she wants to do. And to be wherever she wants to be. And the difference between a publisher like the Daily Wire and a platform like Locals is obviously that a platform should have a very broad range of speech that it allows, including speech that maybe even the creators don't believe is inside what they would consider to be the overton window. It's a very different thing than direct subsidization of particular opinions. The Daily Wire would not have a host, would not pay a host who was staunchly pro-abortion. They have no obligation to pay a host who was staunchly pro-abortion. And so when it comes to the host on the Daily Wire, obviously everyone's able to say what they want. Nobody ever comes to me and says, you can't say X. Nobody ever says it's a Walsh. No one ever said that to Candace. But the reality is that there is an overton window at the Daily Wire. Obviously, there was a non-meeting of the minds. That's pretty much all I can say on this. And, you know, a lot of this has happened publicly. But you know, to the extent that the Daily Wire is in fact not a publisher, that is in fact not a platform, is a publisher, that means that there is no moral obligation for the Daily, and there's no free speech problem with the Daily Wire saying we don't wish to pay a particular host, or that host saying I don't wish to work here anymore, because again, there's a parting of the ways that you know, it's not really open for discussion at this point.
Does it surprise you that so many people, even on our side of this, are confused about that as it relates to free speech and quote-unquote cancel culture? Like, severing a business tie, as long as you're not throwing someone in jail and they're able to be everywhere else, is not...
I'm not surprised by the controversy, honestly, because to a certain extent, I think that there's been a reaction on the right to the excesses of the left. So because what the left did is they said that the Overton window ought to be closed so tight that no one can get inside the Overton window. Basically, if it's the right of Hillary Clinton, it can't be allowed inside the Overton window. Yes, exactly. And not just with regard to platforms, but with regard to publishers. So, for example, this week, NBC News deciding that Ronna McDaniel was too much for them. Ronna McDaniel can't work at NBC News. The sacred halls of NBC News must not be sullied by the former head of the RNC, Jen Psaki, however, have a show on MSNBC, despite being press secretary for the White House 5 seconds ago. Right? The right's response to that is, I think, correct to say you guys have shut the Overton window too tight, but I think some elements of the right have basically said there is an Overton window. The Overton window should be completely exploded with regard not just to platforms, which I kind of agree, but with regard to publishers. So NBC News not only has an obligation to hire Ronna McDaniel, NBC News has the obligation to hire Alex Jones, for example.
Right. Which just makes no sense at a business level, beyond free speech. I mean, there's a reason the networks existed.
They have editorial positions.
Yeah.
Daily Wire has a very strong editorial position on a wide variety of issues. And by the way, I should say that there are a lot of people who are suggesting this is about disagreements over Israel. I mean, I can safely say it's not about disagreements over Israel to the extent that, without reference to Candace at all here, Matt Walsh has taken the position that America ought not be involved in the Middle East at all. Matt Walsh's position, so far as I understand it, and I've talked to him about it, is that Israel, in a conflict between Israel and Hamas, Israel is obviously a more moral party than the genocidal terrorist group Hamas, but also it's very far away. He doesn't care and doesn't involve America. That's just a pure isolationist position. I disagree with it. I think it's wrong. I think that it's short-sighted. But again, he's on our platform, and that is well within the range of acceptable discourse at the Daily Wire. So you know, the notion that you have to mirror my exact perspectives on what Israel is doing in Gaza is obviously not true, based on the roster hosts that we currently have. There are a lot of other factors obviously at play.
Right. So
one of the consequences of this war has been a lot of very high passions on both sides, a lot of angry disagreements. You and your company have been at the centre of a very high-profile one at the moment with Candace Owens, who's now left Daily Wire. Was she fired, or did she leave of her own volition?
I'm not going to speak to this topic, Piers.
At all?
At all.
You can't give me any insight into why she departed?
No hints, no nothing. I'm not going to speak to this.
Can I ask why?
I mean, you can ask.
No, I'm not. You can ask why you don't want to say anything.
Again, you can ask.
I'm sure that whole thing was rather unpleasant. It's now spun into a debate about whether the Daily Wire is pro-free speech. The accusation is you are until it comes to Israel. How do you respond?
We have a wide variety of positions on Israel right now inside the Daily Wire. Matt Walsh obviously is not one of the hosts at the Daily Wire. He and I wildly disagree about what America's Israel policy should be. Matt is much more isolationist. He basically believes the United States has no real interest in the Middle East, and thus the United States should not be providing material support to anyone, including the state of Israel. The Daily Wire is a publisher, not a platform. I would never call for anyone to be ousted from an actual platform, X, YouTube. Even people who are, I think, absolutely horrific human beings. I've never called for any of them to be ousted. In fact, I've called for them to have their accounts restored if they've been banned. That's not the same thing when it comes to publishers. Publishers obviously have to decide what sort of things they wish to pay for the publication of, and when it comes to hosts and publishers, parting ways, obviously there'll be a non-meeting of the minds. That's pretty much all I can say on that.